I came to my mountain cabin to rest and found my sister, her husband, and his parents living there. She sneered, "What do you want, parasite? I'll call the police." I said, "Try." I walked in and watched her world crumble. I stood at the living room door and watched my father raise a glass of champagne. Aunt Beatrice had already had too much to drink. Her face was flushed, and Aunt Marge was whispering something to my cousin Kyle. Judy sat next to my mother, smiling that sweet smile of hers that always charmed everyone around her. And I felt something tightening inside me, as if someone were slowly tightening a screw. 30 years together, my father began, and everyone fell silent. To the family, to the children. He paused, and I already knew what was coming. I knew it from the way he looked at me, briefly with some irritation. "Some children make you proud," he continued, raising his glass to Judy. "Others just take up space at the table," he said, looking at me again. Mom raised her glass, nodding in agreement. Judy smiled, disdainfully as if it were a joke she was tired of, but still appreciated. Aunt Beatrice giggled, Marge pretended not to hear anything, and Kyle buried his face in his plate. I didn't argue, I didn't yell, I didn't make a scene. I just calmly put my napkin on the table, took out my phone, and started scrolling through the screen. "Irene." Mom frowned. "What are you doing?" I found what I was looking for and turned my phone so everyone could see. Screenshots of bank transfers. 3 years every month, mortgage, utilities, Dad's car insurance, or repairs to their roof last winter. "It's a good thing I have my own place 55 miles from here," I said quietly, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "From now on, rent, utilities, insurance, that's your problem." The silence was deafening. Even Aunt Beatrice stopped chewing. My father turned pale. "What do you think you're doing?" I put my phone in my bag and took my jacket from the back of the chair. "I'm allowing myself to no longer take up space," I replied, and walked to the door. When I got into the car, my hands were shaking so much that I could barely insert the key into the ignition. My heart was pounding in my throat and my vision was blurry. I didn't cry. I just sat there and looked at the festively lit windows of my parents' house. My phone vibrated, a message from Judy. "You ruined Mom's holiday. I hope you feel better." I blocked her number, started the engine, and drove away. The drive to Burlington usually took a little over an hour, but that night I drove slowly, as if I was afraid to get home and face myself. Some boring song was playing on the radio, so I turned off the sound. Silence seemed more appropriate. When I first started working at the casino, I was 19. I had just enrolled in business administration and knew that my parents couldn't afford to pay for my tuition. My father worked as a dispatcher at a building materials warehouse, and my mother was a dental assistant. We had money, but just barely. When I told her I had gotten a job as a career dealer at Sapphire Crown, my mother cried, not out of joy. "That's where sinners sit, Irene," she said. "People who are losing everything. Do you want to be a part of that?" "I want to finish college," I replied. My father was silent then, but his face turned to stone. Since then, our conversations have increasingly been through clenched teeth. Judy was always the good one. She enrolled in marketing and got a job as an administrator at the Paws and Claws Veterinary Clinic. Part-time, of course, because education is more important. My parents were proud of her. She helped animals, talked to customers, smiled, and was kind. Honest work, as my father said. And me? I dealt cards, watched the tables, counted chips, and gradually climbed the career ladder. After 6 years, I became a senior manager. A year later, I was offered to manage a partner casino in Burlington. I bought a small apartment there so I wouldn't have to commute every day. My parents had never been there. When they started having financial difficulties, which happened about 3 years ago when prices began to rise faster than their salaries, I started helping them. At first, it was inconspicuous. I transferred money to their account for a rainy day. Then I simply paid their utility bills through online banking. They didn't even ask where the money came from. They probably thought they were managing on their own. Judy didn't know anything either, or she pretended not to know. I remember how a year ago my father complained at the dinner table that the car had broken down again and the mechanic's prices were astronomical. The next day, I transferred him at 1,500 for repairs. He called in the evening, his voice sounding tense. "Irene, is that you?" "Yes. You shouldn't have." "Dad, you need the car for work." He was silent for a few seconds. "Thanks," he muttered and hung up. It was the closest thing to gratitude I had heard from him in recent years. I got home around 1 in the morning. The apartment greeted me with silence and darkness. I kicked off my shoes, sat down on the sofa, and took out my phone. I opened my blocked contacts and looked at the name Judy. Then I closed the app and put my phone face down. The next morning, my phone rang at 8. Unknown number. I didn't answer. Then again, and again. By lunchtime, I had 8 missed calls. I turned off the sound. On Monday, I went to work earlier than usual. There was always a special atmosphere in the casino, even in the morning when there were few guests. Soft lighting, the quiet ringing of slot machines, the smell of coffee from the bar. I walked past the tables, checked the schedule, and chatted with security. Work was calming. Here I knew the rules. Here I was respected. One of the dealers, Terry, came up to me during a break. "Irene, are you okay?" he asked. "You look tired." "I'm fine," I replied. "Just a lot on my plate." He nodded, but I could see he didn't believe me. Terry had been working here for 15 years. He had seen all kinds of people and knew when someone was lying. "If you need to talk, you know where to find me," he said and walked back to his table. In the evening, when I was returning home, the phone rang again. This time I looked at the screen. Mom. I hesitated for a few seconds, then hung up. She didn't text. She didn't leave a voicemail. She just called again in 5 minutes. I blocked that number, too. That same evening, I sat on the balcony with a cup of tea and looked out over the city. Burlington was small and cozy. I liked it here. There were no parents with their reproaches, no Judy with her sweet omnipotence. There was me. And that was enough. My phone vibrated. A message from Kyle, my cousin. "They're really struggling, Irene. Maybe you shouldn't do this." I started to type a reply, then deleted the text and just blocked him. 2 weeks later, the phone rang again, this time from Aunt Marge's number. I stared at the screen until it went silent. They were clearly trying to reach me through other people, but I wasn't going to respond anymore. For the first month after that dinner, I lived in a strange numbness. It was as if I had cut off a part of myself and now didn't know what to do with it. I woke up, went to work, came home, fell asleep. Sometimes I ate, sometimes I didn't. The phone didn't ring anymore, at least not for the first few weeks. Work became my salvation. I was the first to arrive at the casino and the last to leave. I checked reports, talked to staff, resolved conflicts. In early February, I was called in by the regional director, Walter Hinton, a man in his 50s with gray temples and perpetually tired eyes. "Irene, I want to offer you a promotion," he said, without looking up from the papers on his desk. I blinked. "A promotion?" "The regional senior manager. You'll oversee both casinos, here and in Burlington, plus a 25% raise. What do you say?" I said yes, without even thinking. Walter smiled, which was rare for him. "Good, you'll start next Monday. Be prepared to travel frequently." I nodded, left the office, and only then realized what had just happened. A promotion, more money, more responsibility, more reasons not to think about my parents. The following weeks merged into one endless workday. I traveled between 2 cities, held meetings, and streamlined processes. I began to stay longer in Burlington, sometimes for a whole week. My small apartment turned into a real home. I bought new curtains, put a few houseplants on the windowsill, and even got a coffee maker. For the first time in many years, I felt like I was creating something of my own. Damon came to visit more often. We met 4 years ago at a business management conference. He was there to give a presentation on optimizing production process in pharmaceutical companies, and I was just an audience member. We bumped into each other by accident at the coffee machine. He spilled coffee on my notebook, apologized profusely, and then asked me out to dinner. We've been seeing each other ever since. Not every day, not officially, but consistently. He worked as a process engineer at the Medicor Pharmaceuticals factory. He developed drug manufacturing processes, controlled quality, and optimized costs. He rarely told me about his work, but when he did, I could see his eyes light up. He loved what he did, and I respected him for that. One evening, as we sat on my balcony looking out over the city at night, he suddenly asked, "Why don't you move in with me permanently?" I was taken aback by the surprise. "Damon, I'm serious. I have a bigger apartment, closer to your work here. You're here more often than you are at your place anyway." He smiled, but I could see the tension in his eyes. This wasn't a spontaneous joke. He had been thinking about it. "I'm not ready," I replied honestly. "Why?" I didn't know how to answer, because I was afraid, because I didn't want to owe anyone anything, because I felt that if I took another step towards someone, I would lose myself completely. "I'm just not ready," I repeated quietly. He nodded and put his arm around my shoulders. "Okay, when you're ready, let me know." We never brought up the subject again. 3 months after breaking up with my parents, my phone came back to life. First, my mom called back from a new number that I hadn't had time to block. "Irene, please don't hang up," she said quickly as soon as I answered. I was silent, clutching the phone. My heart was pounding in my throat. "I just wanted to know how you're doing. Are you okay? Are you eating right? How's work?" "Mom, why are you calling?" I asked, trying not to let my voice tremble. "I'm your mother. Am I not allowed to call you?" "You are. But you're not calling for no reason." She paused. I could hear her breathing heavily as if she was preparing to say something but didn't dare. "Everything's fine, if that's what you're asking," she finally said. "Dad took on an extra shift. I'm working a little more, too. We're managing. I wanted to say something, to ask if everything was really okay. But instead, I just replied, "Okay, take care." And I hung up. I sat on the couch, staring at my phone, thinking, are they coping? Or do they just not want to admit that they're having a hard time? Part of me wanted to call back and ask the truth, but I didn't dare. A week later, my father left a voicemail. It was short and dry. "Irene, we need to talk about family matters. Call me back." I didn't call back. Instead, I deleted the message and continued living as if nothing had happened. But that didn't bring me peace. I woke up at night thinking about them. I imagined my father going to his second shift, tired after the first. I imagined my mother counting money, trying to figure out if she had enough for groceries. And every time these thoughts came, I reminded myself of that dinner, of their words, about how much it hurt me. I wrote to Marley, my colleague who lived in the same neighborhood as my parents. We weren't close friends, but we sometimes exchanged messages. She worked as a bartender at one of the local pubs and knew everything about everyone. "Marlo, have you seen my parents lately?" She replied a few hours later. "I saw your father at the bus stop the day before yesterday. He looked tired. I heard that their cable was cut off, then their internet. Everyone in the neighborhood knows they're having financial problems. Your mom asked for extra shifts at the clinic, but they turned her down. Something about budget cuts." I stared at the screen. They cut off the cable, the internet. Mom asked for work and was refused. It became difficult for me to breathe. I imagined my mom going to the management, asking for more hours, and being refused. I imagined my dad at the bus stop, tired, aged. But I did nothing. I just blocked that pain somewhere deep inside and continued working. Work was the perfect distraction. In April, we launched a new loyalty program for players, and I had to coordinate its implementation in both casinos. I gave presentations to staff, set up systems, and dealt with complaints. Terry joked that I lived in the casino, not just worked there. "Are you eating properly?" he asked once when he saw me drinking my third coffee of the morning. "I am," I muttered. When was the last time you ate something other than snacks from the vending machine? I didn't answer because I couldn't remember. He sighed and brought me a sandwich from the cafeteria. Eat, that's an order. I smiled for the first time in weeks. A month later, when I returned home after a long day at work in Burlington, Judy was standing outside my building. I almost dropped my keys in surprise. "Judy, what are you doing here?" She turned around, and I saw immediately that she had changed. She'd lost weight, her face was gaunt, and she had dark circles under her eyes. Her hair, which had always been neatly styled, now hung in messy strands. She was wearing an old jacket that I remembered from college and jeans with scuffs on the knees. "I need to talk to you," she said quietly, wrapping her arms around herself. My heart sank. She looked so fragile, so tired. I remembered teaching her how to ride a bike, how we laughed at silly movies, how she cried when I left for university. "Come in," I nodded, opening the door. We climbed to the 4th floor in complete silence. I opened the apartment and invited her inside. Judy looked around quickly as if assessing the space. Her gaze lingered on the new coffee maker, the plants, the cozy atmosphere. "It's nice here," she said. "Thank you. Would you like some coffee or tea?" "No, thank you." She sat down on the edge of the sofa, clasping her hands on her knees. I sat down opposite her, waiting. "How did you find me?" I asked softly. "Tina told me where you live." "Tina, our mutual friend from college." "Of course." "Judy, what happened?" I asked, seeing her tremble. She looked up at me, and I saw something like despair in her eyes. "I need your help. My parents are having a hard time." I felt something tighten in my chest. "Your parents? Or you?" She shuddered. "Both," she whispered. "It's hard for me too, Irene." Her voice broke, and I could see she was about to cry. "Tell me," I said quietly. She took a deep breath. "I work full-time at the clinic, 8 hours. Then I go to Petland for another 4 hours. I get home around midnight. In the morning, I have classes starting at 8 a.m. I sleep 4 hours a day." She looked up at me, and tears rolled down her cheeks. "I've already failed 2 exams, one in marketing, the other in economics. I'm in danger of being expelled. If I fail another one, I'll be kicked out, and everything I've achieved will be for nothing." It was hard to breathe. I could see her pain, her despair. Part of me wanted to hug her and tell her that everything would be okay. "Judy, I understand that this is difficult for you," I said cautiously. "But why did you come to me? We haven't spoken in months." She wiped her tears with her sleeve. "Because you're my sister, and because I don't know who else to turn to." "What about your parents?" "My parents can't help. Dad took on extra shifts, but it's not enough. Mom is working more too, but they won't give her a raise. They can barely afford the utilities. They sold Mom's car. Now they only have 1 car." I was silent, processing this information. They sold the car, so things really are bad. "What do you want from me?" I asked quietly. "Help us, please. At least partially, at least until I finish college. I have 1 year left. 1 year, Irene." I got up and walked to the window. The city below was going about its business. Cars were driving, people were going home, windows were lit up. I felt 2 emotions fighting inside me, the desire to help and the pain of what had happened. "Judy," I began without turning around, "I want to help you, I really do, but I can't just come back as if nothing happened." "I know," she whispered. "That night hurt me so much, when my father said what he said, when my mother agreed with him, and you just sat there and smiled." I turned to her. "Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you stand up for me?" She looked at the floor, her lips trembling. "I didn't know what to say," she whispered. "I was afraid that my parents would be angry with me too, afraid that I would lose their love. I know it's selfish. I know I did the wrong thing." She looked up at me. "I'm sorry, Irene. I'm really sorry." I saw sincerity in her eyes. I saw that she really understood. I appreciate your apology, I said softly, but I need time. I can't just forget everything that happened. And if I help now, what will change? And my parents still think my job is wrong. They still haven't apologized. What if they apologize? Judy asked quietly. Then I'll think about it, I replied honestly. But until they admit they were wrong, I can't help. I don't want to be just an ATM they turn to when they need money. Judy stood up, wiping away her tears. I understand, she said quietly. I'm sorry for bothering you. She walked to the door, and I suddenly felt something break inside me. Judy, wait. She turned around. If you're really struggling with your studies, I can help you, but not your parents. You. Now, I'll pay for 1 semester, so you can focus on your studies and not have to work 2 jobs. Her eyes widened. Really? But there's one condition, I added. It will be a loan. You'll pay me back when you finish college and get a decent job. She nodded, tears rolling down her cheeks again. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you, Irene. She left, and I stood by the door, feeling my hands shake. I didn't know if I had done the right thing. I didn't know if I would regret it later. An hour later, Damon arrived. He immediately understood that something had happened. He came over, hugged me, and didn't ask any questions. We sat on the balcony. I held a glass of wine and told him everything. You did the right thing, he said when I finished. Are you sure? You helped her, but you didn't let her take advantage of you. You set a boundary. That's right. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to feel that I had really done the right thing. The phone rang. Unknown number. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Answer it, Damon said softly. I picked up the phone, but there was silence on the other end. And then, heavy breathing, and a sudden click, as if someone had hung up. I stared at the phone, feeling goosebumps running down my spine. Who was it? And why did I suddenly feel so scared? 2 months after Judy's visit, I started paying for her tuition. I transferred the money directly to the university to make sure it went where it was supposed to. Judy wrote to me once a week, short messages, thank you, or I passed the exam. Nothing more. I didn't expect more. Her parents didn't get in touch, and I didn't try to contact them. In June, Damon asked me to marry him. We were sitting on the same balcony watching the sunset when he suddenly took a box out of his pocket. I don't want a big ceremony, he said. I don't want hundreds of guests. I just want you, me, and our closest friends. What do you say? I looked at the ring. Simple, elegant, with an emerald instead of a diamond because he remembered that I didn't like traditional stones. Yeah, I whispered. We started planning a small wedding for September, 20 people maximum. A restaurant with a terrace, fresh flowers, a simple dress, nothing extra. I didn't invite my parents. I didn't invite Judy. It was my day, and I wanted it to be peaceful. But in mid-July, when I came home from work, a familiar car was parked outside my building. An old Toyota that I remembered from my childhood. My father's car. My heart sank. I froze at the door, not knowing what to do, and then I saw them. They were sitting on a bench near the entrance, waiting. My father looked 10 years older. The gray hair at his temples was more noticeable, his face was thinner, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Mom was holding a bag on her lap, her hands trembling. I slowly approached them. They stood up. Irene, Mom began, but her voice broke. What are you doing here? I asked. We need to talk, Dad said. Please. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to turn around and walk away, but I saw their faces, saw the despair in their eyes. Come in, I nodded. We climbed to the 4th floor in silence. I opened the apartment door and invited them inside. They looked around, and I could see my mother noticing every detail. The new furniture, the plants, the photos of Damon on the wall. Would you like some coffee? I asked. No, thank you, my mother replied quietly. They sat down on the sofa. and I sat across from them. The silence was heavy. "How did you find my address?" I asked. "Kyle works as a courier in this area," my father replied. "We asked him." "Of course, Kyle." "And why did you come?" My father took a deep breath. "Judy is in the hospital." I felt everything inside me break. "What happened?" my mother cried, covering her face with her hands. My father continued, his voice trembling. "She fell while working at the pet store. At first we thought she was just tired, but then it turned out that she had a severe panic attack with hyperventilation. She was hospitalized. The doctors say acute exhaustion, cardiac arrhythmia, stress-induced arrhythmia. I couldn't breathe. When did this happen?" 3 days ago. She's still in the hospital. She needs tests, treatment, and observation by a cardiologist." "What about insurance?" "Insurance only covers part of it," my mother said through tears. "We need money for additional tests, medication, and a cardiologist. Plus, she needs to finish the semester, otherwise she'll be expelled. And that means everything she's done will be for nothing." I looked at them, feeling different emotions fighting inside me. Fear for Judy, anger at my parents, and something else. Something that felt like guilt. "How much do you need?" I asked quietly. My father named the amount. I nodded. "I'll help." Mom raised her head sharply, her eyes filling with hope. "Really?" But I added, "on one condition." Dad tensed. "What is it?" "It will be a debt, an official one, with a promissory note, which you will pay back to me, every month in installments, as you can." Mom turned pale. "Irene, we're family." "Family," I repeated, and my voice became firm. "You only remembered about family now when you need my money. That's not fair." Dad stood up, his face red. "Unfair?" I stood up too. "What's unfair? That I'm demanding the money I lent you back? Or that you humiliated me for years, called my work dirty, and now you've come to ask for that same dirty money?" "Your sister is in the hospital," he exclaimed. "And who brought her to this?" My hand was shaking and I clenched my fists. "Who said that honest work was the only way? Who forced her to work 2 jobs because you couldn't manage without my help?" "We didn't know it would happen," my mother whispered, crying. "Of course you didn't, because you didn't want to know. You chose your pride over your own daughter's health." The silence was deafening. My father sat with his jaw clenched. My mother cried into her hands. Suddenly, the door opened. Damon walked in, saw the scene, and immediately understood what was happening. "I'm sorry, I didn't know you had guests," he said, but he came up to me and put his hand on my shoulder. "These are my parents," I said quietly. Damon nodded to them. "Good evening." They remained silent. "What's going on here?" he asked me. I told him briefly. He listened carefully, then looked at my parents. "We'll help Judy," he said calmly, "but on Irene's terms." "That's none of your business," my father muttered. "It is my business," Damon replied firmly, "because Irene is my fiancée, and I won't let anyone use her, not even family." My mother looked up at him. "Fiancé?" I nodded. "We're getting married in September." My mother cried even harder, but I didn't know if it was out of joy or pain. "If you hate my money so much," I said quietly, "prove that you can do without it. Show me that your honesty is worth something. Pay me back this debt, and then maybe I'll believe you've really changed." My father looked at me for a long time, then slowly nodded. "Okay, we agree." I got a piece of paper and a pen and wrote a receipt, the amount, the terms, as the repayment period on within 2 years in installments. My father read it, then signed it. His hand was shaking, but he signed. I took the receipt, folded it, and put it on the table. "Tomorrow I'll transfer the money to the hospital and university accounts," I said. "Tell Judy I hope she gets well." They got up, ready to leave. Mom came up to me, wanting to hug me, but I stepped back. "Mom, don't." She stopped, her eyes filling with new tears. "Irene, "Please go," I said quietly. They left. The door closed and I sank onto the sofa, feeling my legs tremble. Damon sat down next to me and hugged me. "You did well," he whispered. "I don't feel like I did well," I replied. "I feel like I just sold a part of my soul." "You protected yourself. That's not selling your soul." I wasn't sure. The next day, I transferred the money. I called the hospital, clarified the details, and transferred the funds to the university's account. I did everything quickly and professionally, not allowing myself to feel anything. A week later, Judy was discharged. She sent me a text message. "Thank you." No emotions, no questions, just "thank you." I stared at the message for a long time, then put my phone away. In the evening, I sat in the kitchen, looking at the receipt lying in my desk drawer. Damon came in and saw me. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I don't know," I replied honestly. He sat down next to me and took my hand. "You did the right thing." "Then why do I feel so bad?" "Because you're human. Because you love your family even if they treated you badly." I nodded, but inside I still felt empty. The next few weeks were strange. I worked, planned my wedding, and saw Damon. But part of me was always thinking about Judy, about how she was lying in the hospital, about whether I was to blame for what had happened. One day I ran into Marla at the casino. She came up to me during a break. "I heard your sister was in the hospital," she said. "Yes," I replied briefly. "How is she?" "Better. She's been discharged." Marla nodded, then asked cautiously, "How are you?" I laughed, briefly, without joy. "Honestly, I don't know." She put her hand on my shoulder. "Irene, you're a good person. Don't forget that." I wanted to believe her. In August, a month before the wedding, I received another message from Judy. This time, it was longer. "Irene, I want to see you. I need to talk, please." I stared at the text, my heart pounding. What did she want to say? Was I ready for this conversation? But before I could reply, my mother called. I hesitated, then picked up the phone. "Irene." Her voice was tense. "We need to talk. Judy wants to tell you something. Something important." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What is it? Money again?" "It's better. You should come over. We need to discuss this in person." She hung up, and I sat there staring at the phone. What was going on? Why did everyone suddenly want to talk to me? I didn't go to my parents' house that day. I didn't answer the phone when my mom called back twice. Instead, I texted Judy, "If you want to talk, come to my place, alone." She didn't reply. Judy recovered and went back to school. I found out from Marla, who heard it from one of the neighbors. Judy was living with her parents again, going to class, no longer working. The doctors had forbidden her to overexert herself. My parents started paying me back, $200 a month. The first payment arrived right on time, then the second, the third. I didn't feel any satisfaction from this, only emptiness. Damon tried to distract me with the wedding. We chose flowers, sampled dishes at the restaurant, discussed music. I smiled, nodded, agreed, but inside there was a kind of deafening silence. "Are you sure you don't want to invite your parents?" he asked once. "I'm sure," I replied curtly. He didn't insist. 6 months after Judy was discharged from the hospital, I received an unexpected message from Kyle. "Irene, your parents are in trouble. Judy has moved out. They're in shock." I stared at the screen. Moved out? When? Why? I wrote to Judy. "What happened?" She replied a few hours later. "I can't live with them anymore. I need space." I wanted to ask more, but she didn't respond. I found out the details from Marla. It turned out that Judy had made a terrible scene in front of her parents. She screamed, cried, and accused them of destroying her health because of their stupid pride. She said that I had wanted to help her for a long time, but they forced her to inject herself until she passed out. That she almost died because of them. "The neighbors heard everything," Marla told me when we met at the supermarket. They say Judy screamed so loud that the windows rattled. Then she packed her things and left. Your mom didn't leave the house for 2 days after that. I listened to this, feeling something tighten in my chest. Part of me felt relieved. Judy had finally said what I had been feeling for years. But another part of me felt pain for my parents. Judy found herself a tiny studio in an old house on the outskirts of town. A basement, small windows, damp walls, but it was hers. She got a job as a technical assistant at a dental clinic. Ironically, the same position her mother had held. She didn't talk to her parents. She blocked their numbers. Meanwhile, her parents were trying to survive. Roger got a job as a night guard at a pharmaceutical factory. They paid more there than at the warehouse. Gloria took on extra shifts at the clinic, although management initially refused. They paid me back regularly without any delays, but they didn't enjoy it. Both daughters had stopped talking to them. I found out about all this bit by bit through Marla, through Cale, through chance encounters with acquaintances. My parents didn't call me. Neither did Judy. Damon and I got married in September. It was a small ceremony on the terrace of a restaurant. 20 guests, simple vows. Terry was Damon's best man, and my colleague Lisa was my maid of honor. It was beautiful, cozy, peaceful. I didn't invite my parents. I thought about it, but didn't dare. The day before the wedding, a card arrived from Judy. Simple, with flowers on the cover. Inside, congratulations, wishing you happiness. I held that card in my hands for a long time, then put it in a desk drawer next to the marriage certificate. The wedding went off without a hitch. We danced, laughed, drank champagne. Damon kissed me under the starry sky, and I felt that it was right, that I was finally home. But at night, when we were lying in the hotel room, I couldn't sleep. I thought about my parents. What were they doing now? Did they know it was my wedding today? Did they regret not being there? 3 months after the wedding, Judy wrote to me. Not a short thank you, but a real message. Irene, I want to see you. I need to talk. Please, it's important. I hesitated for 2 days, then replied, okay, the coffee shop on Main Street, Saturday at 2. Saturday came too quickly. I arrived 15 minutes early, ordered coffee, and sat by the window. Judy showed up right at 2. She looked different. Her hair was shorter, her face was thinner but healthier. Her eyes were clearer. She saw me, came over, and sat down across from me. Hi, she said quietly. Hi. The waitress brought her the menu, but Judy waved her away. Just water, please. We sat in silence for a few minutes. I waited for her to start. Thank you for coming, she said finally. You said it was important. She nodded, clasping her hands on the table. I want to apologize for everything. I blinked in surprise. For what, exactly? For staying silent when you were being humiliated. For thinking I was better than you. For not standing up for you when my father called your work dirty. For smiling at that dinner. Her voice trembled. I was selfish. I only thought about myself. About my parents loving me. About being their favorite. I didn't think about how much it hurt you. I looked at her, not knowing what to say. Part of me wanted to hug her. Another part still hurt. Why did you decide to say this now? I asked quietly. She took a deep breath. Because I understood a lot of things when I was in the hospital and when I started living on my own. When the doctors said I was lucky that my heart had held out. When I looked at the ceiling after work and thought, what if I had died? What would I have left behind? She looked me in the eyes. And I realized that I would have left only pain for you, my parents, myself. I lived wrong. I allowed my parents to use me as a weapon against you. I kept quiet when I should have spoken up. Judy, let me finish, please. I nodded. When I recovered and came home, I started to see things differently. I saw how my parents were trying to pay you back, how they were working 2 jobs, how my mom cried at night, thinking I couldn't hear her, how my dad looked at your photos. which still hang in the living room, she wiped away a tear. And I realized they hadn't changed. They still thought they were right, that their pride was more important than their family, and I couldn't live with them anymore. Is that why you moved out? She nodded. I told them everything I thought. I said they ruined my health, that I almost died because of their stubbornness, that you wanted to help, but they forced me to inject myself until I passed out. How did they react? Mom cried, Dad was silent, and then he said, "We did what we thought was right." And I realized that nothing would change, so I packed my things and left. I sat there, digesting what I had heard. Judy did what I hadn't dared to do for years. She told her parents the truth to their faces. "And how are you now?" I asked gently. She smiled, weakly but sincerely. "Better. Much better. I found a job in a small apartment. It's not easy, but it's mine." She paused, then added, "Actually, there's something else I wanted to tell you. I was offered a job in Oregon. I'm an administrator at a large veterinary clinic. With housing, a decent salary, and health insurance, I felt something tighten in my chest. Oregon? That's on the other side of the country. I know, but I need this. I need to start over, away from all of this, from my parents, from my past, from who I was." She looked at me. "I don't want to run away from you, Irene. I want to run away from myself, from the Judy who kept quiet and smiled when you were being humiliated." I understood her, more than she thought. "When are you leaving?" "In 2 weeks. I haven't told anyone yet, not even my parents." "Are you going to tell them?" She paused. "I don't know. Part of me just wants to disappear, but another part feels like I owe them at least that." I reached across the table and placed my hand on hers. "Judy, you don't owe anyone anything. You have the right to live your own life, and you can always come back." She squeezed my hand, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Thank you for everything, for helping me with my studies, for not turning away when I was in the hospital, for meeting me today." I stood up, walked around the table, and hugged her. She hugged me back, and we stood there for a long time in the middle of the cafe, ignoring the stares of the other patrons. "Will you write to me from Oregon?" I asked when we finally let go of each other. "I will, I promise." We walked out together and stood by her car. "Congratulations on your wedding," she said. "I'm sorry I didn't come. I wasn't ready. I understand. Damon is a good man. I saw the photos. You looked happy." "I am happy," I replied, realizing that it was true. Judy got in her car, waved to me, and drove away. I watched her go, feeling a mixture of emotions: sadness, relief, hope. That evening, I told Damon about the meeting. He listened attentively, holding my hand. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "I don't know. I'm glad Judy and I made up, but I'm sad that she's moving so far away. It's her choice, and it's the right one for her." I nodded. "What about her parents? Do they know?" "Judy hasn't told them. I don't know if she will." Damon was silent for a moment. What do you think will happen when they find out?" I thought about my parents, about how they work 2 jobs to pay off my debt, about how my mom cries at night, about how both of their daughters no longer talk to them. "I think it will hurt them a lot," I replied quietly. 2 weeks later, Judy left. She sent me a photo from the road. She was standing next to her car with the mountains in the background, smiling. The caption read, "A new life begins." I smiled as I looked at the photo, and then my mom called me. Her voice was agitated, almost panicked. "Irene, Judy is missing. We can't find her. She's not answering her phone. Do you know where she is?" I held my breath. My mother didn't know. Judy hadn't told them. "Mom, please, Irene, if you know anything, tell us. We're going crazy." I looked at Judy's photo on my phone screen. She looked happy, free, and I realized I had a choice. Keep my sister's secret or tell my parents the truth. 2 weeks after that call from my mom, I still hadn't answered her question about Judy. I just hung up saying, "She's an adult. Let her decide when to contact you." My mother cried into the phone, but I didn't change my mind. Judy wrote to me from Oregon a month later. "Thank you for not telling them. I needed this time." She sent photos. A new clinic, a small apartment overlooking the forest, herself smiling against the backdrop of the mountains. She looked happy. Life was entering a new rhythm. I worked, Damon worked, we went to the lake on weekends, cooked dinner together, watched movies. My parents continued to pay off the debt every month without fail, $200 at a time. I opened a separate account for this money and didn't touch it. I didn't know why. I just couldn't bring myself to spend it. Spring turned into summer. Summer into fall. I celebrated my 29th birthday in September. Damon surprised me with a small party on the terrace of our favorite coffee shop. Terry and his wife came. Lisa came from work. Marla Judy sent a video greeting. She was standing in front of the ocean, smiling, saying she loved me. My parents weren't there. I didn't invite them. But at night, when Damon and I were lying in bed, he suddenly asked, "Do you ever think about them?" "Who?" "Your parents." I paused. "Sometimes." "And how does that make you feel?" "I don't know. Empty, I guess. Or pain, or both." He kissed me on the temple. "If you ever want to try again, I'll support you." I nodded but didn't answer. In October, something unexpected happened. Judy wrote, "I'm coming to your wedding anniversary. I already bought the tickets. Don't you dare say no." I smiled as I looked at the message. Damon saw my face and asked, "Good news?" "Judy's coming." "That's great," he said and hugged me. "Did you miss her?" "Very much." Judy arrived a week before our anniversary. I met her at the airport, and when she came out of the arrivals area, I barely recognized her. Her hair was longer, her face was tanned, and there was a light in her eyes that hadn't been there before. We hugged, and she whispered, "I missed you so much." "Me too." On the way home, she told me about Oregon, about her job at the clinic, her colleagues, the nature. And then a little shyly, she added, "I'm seeing someone. His name is Levi. He's a veterinarian at our clinic." "Really?" I smiled. "Tell me about it." She told me how they met, how he asked her out for coffee, how they hiked in the mountains, how he taught her to kayak. Her voice was so happy that it warmed my heart. "Does he know everything?" I asked. "About the hospital, about my parents?" "He knows. He's very supportive." "I'm happy for you, Judy, really happy." She squeezed my hand. "Thank you for everything." In the evening, the three of us, Damon, Judy, and I, sat in the kitchen drinking wine and laughing. Judy told funny stories about the clinic's clients. Damon told stories about the weird things that happened at the factory. I just listened, enjoying the moment. "What about your parents?" Judy asked suddenly. I tensed up. "I don't know. We don't talk." "Are they still paying off the debt?" "Yes." "Every month." She nodded, looking into her glass. "I think about them sometimes, about how they're doing now, but then I remember everything that happened and the thought disappears." "I understand," I said quietly. Damon put his hand on my shoulder. "Maybe you should call them, just to see how they're doing." "I don't know," I replied honestly. "Part of me wants to, but another part is afraid." "What are you afraid of?" Judy asked. "That nothing will change, that they still think I'm wrong." Judy nodded in understanding. For our wedding anniversary, we decided to have a small dinner at home. Judy helped me cook. We made lasagna, salad, and baked bread. Damon set the table, lit candles, and chose the music. It was cozy, calm, and just right. At 7 o'clock in the evening, just as we sat down at the table, the doorbell rang. Damon looked at me in surprise. "Did you invite someone?" "No." He went to open the door. I heard him open the door and then silence, a long, heavy silence. "Irene," he called out finally, It's your parents." My heart sank. Judy turned pale, clutching her fork. I slowly got up and went to the door. Roger and Gloria were standing on the doorstep. They looked older, grayer, thinner, with dark circles under their eyes. But there was something else in their faces, something like resignation. "What are you doing here?" I asked quietly. "I came for Irene's anniversary," Judy replied coldly. The silence was deafening. Damon was the first to break it. "Please, sit down. Have you had dinner yet?" "We don't want to bother you," Mom began. "Sit down," Damon repeated firmly. They sat down at the table. I sat across from him, Judy next to me, and Damon at the end. The atmosphere was so tense you could cut it with a knife. My father took a bottle of wine out of the bag he was holding. "We brought this for you, for your anniversary." Damon took the bottle, thanked him, and opened it. He poured it into glasses. Everyone was silent. My father slowly stood up, raising his glass. His hands were shaking. "We want to apologize," he began, his voice trembling, "to both of you." Mom cried, covering her face with a napkin. "We were blind, arrogant, stubborn fools," Dad continued. "We thought we knew how to live right, that our opinion was more important than your happiness." He looked at me. "Irene, you saved us for years. You paid our bills when we could barely make ends meet, and we humiliated you. We called your work sinful. We said you were taking a place at the table. That's unforgivable." His voice broke, and he fell silent, swallowing his tears. "Judy," he looked at my sister, "we drove you to the hospital. Because of our pride, because of our stubbornness, you almost died. Your heart barely held out, and it's our fault, only ours." Judy cried silently, wiping her tears with her hand. "We weren't at your wedding, Irene." My father continued, "We missed the most important moments of your lives. We don't know your husbands. We don't know how you live, what you dream about." He put his glass down on the table. "But we are proud of you, both of you. No matter where you work, how much you earn, how you live, you are strong, smart, kind. And we lost you because of our own stupidity." Mom got up and hugged Dad. They were both crying. I sat there not knowing what to feel. Anger, relief, pain, all of it. "Are you saying this because you have nothing left?" I asked quietly. "Because we both left?" Mom looked up at me, her eyes red from crying. "We're saying this because we realized we lost the most precious thing. Not money, not pride, our daughters." "We work 2 jobs, Dad added. We pay you back. We live hand to mouth. But it doesn't matter. Because what good is money when you sit at home alone and realize that your children don't want to see you anymore?" He looked me in the eyes. "We don't expect you to forgive us. We don't expect everything to be like it was before. But we wanted you to know. We're sorry. Very sorry." Judy suddenly spoke, her voice trembling. "I had to move out because I couldn't stand seeing you every day and remembering how you drove me to the hospital. I can't promise forgiveness," I said finally. "I can't promise warm family evenings, too much pain, too many wounds." My parents nodded in acceptance. "But," I added, "if you're truly ready to change, if it's not just words, I think we all deserve a chance. One chance. If you want to be part of my life, prove that all is not lost. Not with words, with actions." "We'll prove it," my father promised. "We swear." Dinner lasted another 2 hours. We talked cautiously, avoiding sensitive topics. My parents talked about their work, I talked about my promotion, and Judy talked about Oregon. Damon told a few jokes, and even my mother smiled. When my parents were about to leave, my mother came up to me. "Can I give you a hug?" she asked quietly. I hesitated, then nodded. She hugged me tightly for a long time. She smelled the same as she did when I was a child. I felt something break inside me. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for giving us a chance." When they left, Judy and I sat on the balcony and looked at the starry sky. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "I don't know. How are you?" "I don't know either. I'm not ready to forgive them, but maybe someday." "Me neither," I replied. but I'll give them a chance. If they want to change, we'll see. Damon came out onto the balcony and placed a cup of tea in front of me. "You did well," he said quietly. "I'm not sure," I replied honestly, "but you tried, and that's what matters." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, thinking about my parents, about Judy, about everything that had happened over the past 2.5 years. I don't know if people can really change. Will my parents ever understand that money has no color, neither clean nor dirty? It's only how you use it and whether you can look at yourself in the mirror. I don't promise them forgiveness. I don't promise warm family evenings, shared holidays, hugs on the doorstep. Too much pain, too many scars, but I promise myself not to hold on to the anger that eats me up inside, not to let the past steal my future. If they are really ready to change, I will see it. If not, I have already learned to live without their approval. I have built my life, my happiness, my family with Damon, with Judy, with friends who support me. Damon says I am strong. Judy says I am inspiring. Terry says I'm the best manager he knows. Maybe that's true. Maybe I've just learned to defend my boundaries, to say no when I need to say yes when I want to. Will time tell if my parents have changed? I don't know. But I know one thing for sure. I am no longer the girl who silently swallowed insults at the holiday table. I am not the woman who allowed herself to be humiliated for the sake of family peace. I have learned to love myself, to respect myself, to defend myself. And that is the most important change of all. Dirty money? A clear conscience? Isn't that ironic? But you know what? My conscience is clear. I work, I build my life, and if someone can't see that, it's their problem, not mine. I closed my eyes, feeling Damon hug me in my sleep. And for the first time in a long time, I fell asleep peacefully. Tomorrow will be a new day, and maybe it will bring new challenges, or new opportunities, or just the simple happiness of a quiet morning with my loved one by my side. But whatever happens, I know I can handle it, because I've already done the hardest part. I've learned to live for myself.